Proposals heat up for changes to EIDL grants and loans, but what do I think? Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Evenings LALATE. Hope you're good and safe. This is our 1-hour programming block every night that starts with a check at 6:45 and goes to EIDL. This is a video I've never done before and may never do it again, but viewers have asked me specifically and personally what I think about the current proposals by members of Congress to change EIDL and EIDL loans and EIDL grants going forward in the second stimulus check. And so I record this video especially for members of Congress, for you to share it with your elected official, to see the concerns, not so much for me on a personal level, even though you've asked that specifically, but as the questions and concerns of my viewers over the last few months. As a backup, let me just explain what this channel has done. This channel started on April 25th with no viewers, no subscribers, and within now less than 100 days is at 160,000 subscribers. We're doing 1.5 million views every 48 hours. There's currently 65,000 people on the channel at this very minute, and we have recorded 8 videos every single day since that very beginning, one on EIDL and EIDL loan, with about 500 to 1,000 comments per video. So I've seen a lot of comments, and what this channel has done is the following. We have gotten viewers somewhere between $10 to $25 million in EIDL loans that they were entitled to get, but had not gotten them because of some technical problems with SBA. In the last 2 weeks, we launched something called The Private, which is a private Instagram account in which we personally help the viewers one-on-one with 3 mentors. These are 3 people that I personally got their loans approved, and they've now turned back to help others. So where are the problems with EIDL going forward? Let me address loan first. Well, actually, before I get to loan or grant, let me talk about processing issues right off the bat. If SBA is to revisit or revamp or do any changes to EIDL going forward, they must first do this. They should not open the floodgate to more applicants until they fix existing applicants for both grants and loans. The number one problem that this channel had was back in May and June. SBA, specifically Javita Carranza, appeared before a congressional hearing and said that she's ready to reopen it and that she expects everything to be finished and processed for existing loans in the next week. It was an untrue statement because to this day I'm still working on those applicants. These aren't per se people who were denied loans. These are people who weren't even given a decision from March. It's literally that bad a situation. So I would urge that the whole application process is not reopened in any regards until everyone that is still pending is finished. Next, I don't believe that anything should be done with SBA until the following institution is established. There needs to be an oversight committee that is made up of business owners, public citizens, and elected officials, both on a national and regional level. I would be happy to do the one here in Southern California, and also in the and if there's a national meeting as well. The problem is that there are concerns that are not being addressed by the House committee. The House committee has been basically a rubber stamp, and that SBA has no internal process set up to address people who are not getting things processed, who have things stuck, who need assistance, who don't understand eligibility, who have basically situations that would normally go to an ombudsman, who in this case is not helpful as well, and they've had to look for help. They've looked to this channel and me for help like no one else, and that should not be necessary. We shouldn't have to have 900 people in a private Instagram account helping one another to figure out how to do things at SBA, because SBA doesn't help people, because Congress doesn't help people, because no one else is out there helping. There should be a task force and an oversight committee. Second, that oversight committee needs to ensure that money is spent in the way it's spent, and that policies are spent in the way in which the act is established, and that there's no digression on lending policies. Now, I fully understand that SBA, under its inherent charter agreement, allows it to determine the manner in which it grants loans, to have its own discretion as to how and where it does loans. But the problem about that is that the discretion and the benchmarks are changing on a daily basis. That's not appropriate. The benchmarks should be publicly disclosed and publicly understood. Let me give you an example. Currently, there's an SBA there's a current SBA policy that EIDL loans are capped at $150,000. It was not the policy a few weeks ago. Currently, there's a policy that SBA loans are not granted to anybody who has an Experian Vantage 3.0 score less than 570 or 580. That was not the policy several weeks ago. Currently, there's a policy that if you're in real estate development, you qualify for EIDL loans, or real estate businesses like real estate brokers and things like that. That was not the policy several weeks ago. They were inherently denied. So it is that problem that people are granted a loan if they apply in one month of the year, but are denied the loan if they apply in the different month of the year, and they have and that is not appropriate. People should not be treated differently based upon the week of the month in which they apply, because the policies of SBA should digress. Here is how I think that SBA should be restructured going forward. First, loan. First, the credit score. I think it's totally appropriate that SBA have a benchmark credit score and not lend below that credit score, but the number has to be fixed and not changing every month. If SBA wants to keep it at 570 or 580, that's great, but here's the other problem. Currently, SBA is using Experian Vantage 3.0 credit score. What that means is they only determine loans by Experian and an Experian product called Vantage, V-A-N-T-A-G-E, and a version called 3.0. The problems with that are absolutely enormous. The first problem is that if you call up Experian right now and ask what your 3.0 score is, they will literally tell you, we don't keep track of 3.0 anymore. We only do 4.0. Second, the ability of access of the public citizen to determine their 3.0 Vantage score is extremely difficult. It's not an easy process. They have to download an app or go to a specialized website or pay a fee. It's not like FICO or other institutional credit scores that you can find very quickly for free. SBA should not have a credit score agency that it's doing business with that makes it so difficult to determine whether or not you're eligible to get the loan. Next, SBA should have guidance about how to reach that credit, how to get a co-borrower, or whether or not that co-borrower will reach you that credit limit. Currently, they have a guidance that you can get a co-borrower to get over the credit limit. Next, and I can't believe I'm actually saying this, but SBA should be given guidance and instructions clearly that they are only to pull credit one time per applicant, unless they undergo reconsideration, and then it's a second repull. During the initial application of COVID-19, my viewers were hit with upwards of 9 to 20 Experian hard credit pulls by SBA's offices for pending applications, not for anything else. They filed an application, they got 9 to 20 Experian hard credit pulls, dropping their credit score 200 to 300 points, ruining their credit. SBA has never taken accountability for it, has never admitted it occurred. It was rampant. Ultimately, the viewers were able to get those things taken off, but it should never have happened. So there has to be guidance as to how SBA takes only one credit pull per cycle, whether it's a grant credit pull, a cycle for recon, a setup for loan, one credit pull and one credit pull only. Next, there should be guidance about the loan amount and the loan calculation. First, SBA has never been consistent about the average loan or the average loan amount. SBA, during a congressional hearing, Javita Carranza said the average loan was this and the average grant, the ceiling was that. It was completely incorrect, because at that time I had viewers who were getting 3 times that amount for EIDL loans. I don't know why she was saying that. Even her own SBA documents were not supporting that. So what I recommend is a determinative number that says this is the highest amount for EIDL loans, whatever it is, and it should be sufficient. It should be somewhere around 400 to 500,000. The initial average EIDL loan amount per SBA's own loan documents back in May and June was about $250,000. To hold applicants now at $150,000 is inappropriate. Next, they should have a very clear process by which current loan funded people can go back and escalate their EIDL loans. They don't have it. The current contract, the loan agreement, says that at any time in the first 2 years you can increase your EIDL loan with SBA. The problem is SBA has not made that process easy, has made it very difficult, has asked the applicants to go through reconsideration, a very drawn out process. It should be very simple. I have one viewer last night who told me her numbers, her revenue, her cost of goods sold. It was very simple. What's very good here is that SBA has a very clear calculation. Revenue minus the cost of goods sold divided by 2. It's very simple. The problem is that viewer came out to a $600,000 loan and only got, $100,000, $150,000 loan. They qualify for more money. They need more money. They can't survive with that amount of money. Next, SBA needs to have guidance as to how it treats applicants who did not have significant 2019 earnings prior to the pandemic. SBA, as I just told you, lends based upon revenue minus cost of goods sold divided by 2 based upon 2019 earnings, but also gives loans based upon pro formas of 2020 numbers. It needs to have better guidance and clear determination of how those people can do it, because a lot of viewers never even applied, thinking that they had no 2019 numbers, they couldn't get loans. They can, but it's just not clear. Next, SBA needs to clarify collateralization and working capital. Today, it remains the 2 mysteries of the EIDL process. The EIDL contract says that they will take collateralization if your loan amount is $25,000 or $1 more or anything that is working capital. But nowhere in the agreement does it define working capital. So viewers are left to guess, if they default on their loan, what will actually be taken as working capital. These are very clear very clear terms that you need to define, but in the case of SBA, there's literally no definition. Next, the grant. The grant has really been one of those stories that people have sort of simplified to the point that it's no longer digestible. It is a far more complicated story than has been portrayed. The grant application required SBA to pay the grant money within 3 days after the applicant applied, up to the amount that the applicant requested. It was a form that had a series of buttons. The first thing that happened from SBA was it's continually represented to viewers of this channel that they had not clicked the button to ask for the grant, and so that they were not given it. Ironically, if you go to the application now, there's no way to get a copy of what you submit, and it was a he says, she says. There's literally no way to confirm what you do unless you take a screen grab of an application, which most people don't do. So SBA could inherently just deny ever giving you a penny for a grant based upon a he says, she says. Next, the $10,000 EIDL grant obviously was due to every applicant who applied on the Streamline application, which went live in March. And they were not paid that $10,000. They're owed that $10,000. They're owed that $10,000 retroactive back to the date in which they applied. There are hundreds of thousands of applicants who owed that $10,000 money and got $1,000 based upon employee, which is a clear digression from the CARES Act. It is something that was created by Kimberly Butler, a representative in SBA, to sort of create new policies and do what we want this month and do this thing. The next thing was that they said, okay, agricultural people can come in and then someone else can come in. This has to really stop. EIDL grants for people who applied and got $1,000 per employee, but not the full $10,000, have to be paid retroactively with a fund of money dedicated by the Congress and the Treasury specifically for grants. That if that fund is to run out, that SBA is to ask to have the fund replenished until all existing grant recipients get their full $10,000. This is before you start to do anything else. Next, SBA is to ensure that in the case of people who got EIDL grants under false accord, be fully prosecuted. It is highly documented everywhere that strippers applied for EIDL grants based upon an Instagram account telling them to apply and calling themselves artists. It is highly documented that one and a series of channels told people to apply for EIDL grants as agricultural businesses when they were not. It is highly documented that people basically abuse the EIDL grant process, and that's why SBA ultimately didn't pay the money. SBA should be given sufficient funding by Congress to ensure that those grants are brought up to the present at $10,000. There was no reason, rhyme, or rationale as to why it was $1,000 per employee. There are thousands of tales I can tell to you of businesses that are self-run or husband and wife. They don't have employees. And they simply did not know when they applied that this employee number was going to be the determinant of how much grant money they got. So, example, I have a husband and wives who both own a business and applied and just put one employee or no employees. Or people who actually did have employees, 20 employees, but only put, how many employees were there that week, not how many employees they had that month, because they didn't think it was it was not a determining number. In fact, the application did not say that that number would determine your grant. Had they had known that, they would have taken time and precaution to fully make sure the number was correct. They didn't, and they got, unfortunately, underfunded. Going forward, there has to be an oversight committee of SBA. SBA's funding practices, SBA's lending practices, SBA's credit practices, SBA's grant practices. SBA, since March to the present, has made it very clear that they do not intend to follow anything that is told of them. They do not follow congressional letters, which this channel has detailed extensively. They do not follow the complaints of viewers. They do not follow the request of applicants. They simply create policies that change by the minute. With that, I urge you to really adopt these ordinances, to adopt these guidances, to make them manifest as law, because simply telling SBA to do something has not worked. Ultimately, they have to be held accountable, or they'll do it again. I thank you for your time, and as always, stay motivated, stay inspired, stay positive, and stay of LA for more.